I believe firmly in that it takes a village to raise kids. It takes a village, and one of the things about my village is that there are 2 human beings in that village, and their names are Kathy Sample and Bill Brinkerhoff, and they have this amazing organization called Argus Farm Stop, for which is my daughter's first employer. And one could not ask for 2 better first bosses than Bill and Kathy. I will get these cute little texts from Kathy going, "Oh my God, I just saw Linnea do blah, blah, blah. She's so cute." For those of you who are parents, when you see other people love your kids as much as you think you might love your kids, that's a gift. But Argus Farm Stop is not just a gift to me, it's a gift to a community. And the thing that I love about Argus Farm Stop is that you can hear any conversation in that place. People's minds can be changed. Aaron will tell you a story about during the election season, the woman, Linda, who sells outside really amazing bagel bombs. I'm telling you, they're pretty amazing. Was having a conversation with a customer, and the 2 of them were having a whole kind of really thoughtful, really kind conversation about who was running for governor. And after a little while, the person said to Linda, like, "You really changed my mind on this. I really appreciate that." There are babies there. There are kids there. There are college students with headphones in doing their homework, using up the Wi-Fi. It is an amazing, amazing place. And it's even more amazing if you realize that the space that they created was an abandoned gas station and turned medical marijuana dispensary, turned another abandoned building again in the heart of the Old West Side of Ann Arbor. And all of a sudden, they started painting that thing, and I'm like, what's going on there? And then all of a sudden, they were growing corn on a roof. And then all of a sudden, they opened. And what they did is they opened and they created this space and this community for us that has kept on giving. And they're going to tell you that story. But mostly what I want to do is just welcome Bill and Kathy to the stage and say thank you for not just making a community for us, but a community for local farmers and for the local food ecosystem. You have created a model that I cannot wait to see spread across not just the United States, but the world.
Wow. I think that's the best introduction I've ever had.
Yeah, so I'm Bill Brinkerhoff, and my wife Kathy Sample and I formed Argus Farm Stop just about 5 years ago. I'd really, I guess Ann's kind words are fantastic, but I'll kind of mirror them back at her because, when you have a person who's an expert in innovation and she teaches innovation and she encourages what you're doing and tells you what a great job you're doing, it gives you a lot of energy to keep going. And we've been fueled with that energy since we started. So Argus Farm Stop is, the innovation is on the business model and trying to make it easier to sell local food and buy local food. And we'll get into the details of that. Kind of our organization of our slides and our talk is, first of all, talk about the problems that our industrial food system has created and that we're facing. We'll get into kind of what we're trying to do at Argus and then some of the impact that we think we've had. And it's a little bit kind of awesome to be presenting here as well. We've looked at the prior year keynote speakers, and it's been a pretty prestigious group of people with big footsteps. So, bear with us as we tell our story. Before we get into the details of that, I'll just tell one story from my childhood, which was as we were growing up on Christmas morning, our dad would put oranges in our Christmas stockings, and we could never really figure out why we got oranges in our Christmas stockings. Until we started, working with the food system and talking about why that was. And my father, growing up in the 20s and the 30s, that they carried on a family tradition, and they also put oranges in their Christmas stockings back then. And it was a big deal in upstate New York to get an orange in the middle of winter. And I think what we've seen is innovation taking place and impacting the food system. And I think maybe what we've seen there is that has gone too far, and we're starting to see the impact of that pendulum swinging too far, to the point that on average food travels 1,500 miles from farm to table, and to the point that local ability to create food and grow food has been really impacted. And so that's what we'll talk about, but let's take a look at some of the data. So in our county, 93% of the farms that produce food have disappeared since 1950, and And this is data from the USDA's agricultural census, which they do every 5 years. And it really tracks the intimate details of what's grown in a farm, how it's sold. And these statistics, or this statistic, is similar across the state of Michigan, and it's similar across the country. What we know when you look back in 1950 is that farming used to be more local, and food used to be more local from those farms. And the farms themselves grew a lot more things. Instead of just corn and soybeans and what you see now coming from farms, they grew produce and fruit, and they also had chickens and cows, and probably grew hay for their cows as well. And in the transition to this kind of corn and soybean kind of growing, farming, instead of growing food for people, has turned into the first step of a more industrial process, because most of the corn and soybeans is not consumed by humans. It's transformed into other products, and it's not necessarily food. Another impact that we learned about in this ag census is the aging of farmers, and that the average age of farmers in Michigan is 58, and it's the same across the country. And what it means is that half the farmers are older than 58. And the impact for us as a community is that in the next 5 years, across the country, over 100 million acres is going to be in transition from those farms, and there's nobody really standing there to take it over. The next generation, their kids have left the farm, and there's not a big line of young farmers lining up. And so our food system is going to face some pretty monumental risks over the next decade. And a final note is, for those young farmers that do decide to try to go into farming, there's a tremendously high failure rate. So within the first 5 years, in spite of having all the passion and the desire to grow food for people, half these farmers will not make it, past the 5th year. So I had the job. I still have the job of kind of telling you the bad news. It's going to get better as we go through the presentation. But the industrial food system definitely has had some impact on our abilities to create local food. So why is this? So this slide across the top shows the distribution of food and the long track that 1,500-mile journey takes from a farm over to a consumer. And as a result of this long chain, the actual farmers who plant these seeds and grow the food get less than 15 cents of the retail sales dollar, and 85 cents goes to all the middlemen and the distributors and the aggregators. With those kinds of margins, the only farms that really make it are the larger farms. They tend to be farther away, and they tend to be pressured into using non-ideal labor practices and non-ideal growing practices. It's also a supply chain that's at great risk to supply chain interruption. So if something happens to the price of oil, how we're used to getting all this food, like a head of lettuce from California, can be disrupted. If there's an impact of climate change, that's Yuma, Arizona on the bottom left, where they're growing lettuce, which happened to be actually ground zero for the E. coli outbreak as well for lettuce. It's not going to be a place, I'm pretty sure, that they're growing lettuce 50 years from now. And if we've lost our ability to grow food locally, and that's what you're relying on, you're going to be in trouble. And another note, I guess on the bottom right side is Melvin Parson. He's a farmer in Ypsilanti that has a farm focused on growing amazing food, but with a social benefit in that he focuses on formerly incarcerated people and trying to give them a pathway back to economic, which is a great theme that we've seen here from a couple of the teams, but a great pathway back to economic prosperity. And, if he's trying to sell food now, the real, opportunities are through farmers markets, which are great, but they're not every day, which we'll get into, some of the challenges that they face. And if they try to go conventional, like to bigger stores, they get the 15 cents on the dollar. And I guess the last couple things I'll mention just about the current food system are that this system also engenders tremendous waste. So the USDA estimates as food travels from the left to the right across that pathway, 30% is lost, and most people estimate that it's closer to 50%. And then I think personally, it's also had an impact on the kinds of food that we're able to eat and enjoy. And the food that's selected for this kind of system is really selected not for their taste or their nutrition, but more so Is it durable? Can it make the journey across the country? So you get tomatoes that don't really taste, they taste terrible. You get apples that are really tasteless. And one thing that we've seen at Argus is like the little kid that tastes like what a vegetable is supposed to taste like because it's coming from a close-by farm and it's an heirloom variety bred for taste. And they have a whole new relationship with food. So these were the kinds of things that were kind of on our mind in 2013 as we were thinking about what to do next. And at that point, we met Jessica, and I'll turn it over to Kathy to tell the story from here.
So that was 2013? Okay, so it seems like a long time ago. We were going up to the College of Worcester to bring our son to college. Oh, here. Do a good job. We were going up to the College of Worcester, and it's a small town, Worcester, Ohio. It's a kind of a blue-collar town. It's where Rubbermaid used to be. It's a lovely little town surrounded by farms. And we dropped Ben off, and then we wandered into this downtown, and we found this awesome store. And it was a farmer's market, but the farmers were just dropping their stuff off, and then the staff was selling for them, and the farmers were going on their way. We had a chance over time to meet some of the farmers, and it was one of those, for us, it was an aha moment. Like, why doesn't every town have a store like this? Why are we buying our food in such an industrial way, and we don't know who's growing it? And it really resonated with us. So we struck up a conversation with Jessica, who had started this store. She's really amazing. She started it when she was 28, I think. And we talked with her about what this model looked like and how did it work. And she was very welcoming and open. So we wandered back to Ann Arbor, and we thought, well, let's talk to people about maybe doing something like that in Ann Arbor. We had, I think we counted a total of over 200 conversations with people. And so when you guys who are having these projects are talking to your target market, never stop talking to people. It's really important. We had focus groups with farmers. We talked to everybody in the food system, politicians. We talked to the city officials because we thought maybe they would give us a building to try this out in. That didn't really work out. It's Ann Arbor. So we were told, you guys should just do it. Let's try it. And so we said, okay, we're going to do it. So first thing we did is we embarked on this venture to start a farm stop. We call it a farm stop because it's not a farm stand. It's not a traditional farmer's market because we're open every day all year. And what we have found with our mission to grow the local food economy is that if you give farmers a place to sell their product at a price that they can afford to sell it for and make money, they will grow far more than you ever thought they could grow. So here we are in Michigan, and our produce deck is beautiful any time of the year because we have hoop houses and we have technology. So that's what we did. We first found a building, an old abandoned gas station, and that's what Ann was talking about when she saw us painting it. I think Linnea might even helped us get the paint on that building. First thing we did was find a location. We incorporated our business as an L3C. That's a low-profit, limited liability corporation. So that's a for-profit corporation because we didn't want to do a nonprofit and spend a lot of time raising money every year. But, you know, because you're beholden that way to just continue that pipeline of grants, and we didn't have it in us to do that. So we found the building. We incorporated, and we started hiring. And one of the best things we did was find staff who knew what they were doing. And we found some amazing people who understood our mission, understood where we were in this journey, and who had such talent that they could help us move our model along. So first we hired, I don't think I mentioned that the business model is that we pay farmers 75% of the price of the goods that they sell there, and they set the price, and they own the goods. So the farmer owns the product on our shelves, and so we have to take really good care of it and sell that for them. But they get 75% of the price, which is how many times what they would get in an industrial food system? Come on, you guys do the math. 5 times, right. So it's really turning that whole model on its head. So our farmers rallied. We opened up in August of 2014, and within the first week, we had already hit a sales level that we had built into our pro forma 18 months down the road. So we knew that there was a latent market in Ann Arbor of people who weren't making it to the farmers market on Saturdays and Wednesdays. And that was kind of our premise, that there were enough people who cared about where their food was grown. So that first week, we realized that, okay, this might work. We might not have to sublet the building in a year. We felt really good about that. We opened another location about 1.5 miles from that first location in 2017, And now this is a statistic we're really proud of. We've paid out over $5 million to local farms. This is $5 million that they would not have earned had these stores not been there, because they would have been at the regular 1-day-a-week farmers market. So we are over and above the farmers market. We work with the farmers market because we love it. We think that the sense of community and the sense of relationship with the farms is really important to build at all levels. This is Hannah Rose Weber in her hoop house. She's probably, 28 years old. She's from up north. She wanted to be a farmer. She started farming out off Pontiac Trail at an incubator farm where she was able to get a piece of land and a hoop house under an incubator situation and learn how to farm. And she just knocked it out of the ballpark. She's got a CSA where she sells salad shares and greens, and they are fantastic. And she's got a loyal following, and she sells a lot at our store. So the benefit to how we do it is that every 2 weeks, she gets a check or a direct deposit, and she gets a report for everything that she sold, and it's quantified, and she can track, like, what's selling, what's not selling, and she can take that report at the end of the year to the bank and say, this is how much money I'm making. I would like a loan to buy some land, please, and that's the stage that she's at now. So we feel like that's a big advantage at this point for a young farmer who's starting out. We started out, when we opened the doors, we had 40 farmers because, it's a new concept, and I'm not sure they understood what we were trying to do. We have over 200 now. We have a waiting list for farmers. We have a waiting list to get in all categories. We do beef, dairy, the whole 9 yards. So it's working. It's been a successful model, and we feel like we identified the problem, we addressed the problem, we worked for several years really hard, tried to hone the model a little bit and get it to a point where it's efficient, it's effective, our customers feel like they're appreciated, and our farmers are giving us really good feedback. So let me just tell you the rest of the story. Let me tell you, it's not all kittens and roses when you do something like this. And so you are giving us presentations about how your plan is, how it's going to work. Your projections are just like that. Your projections are pretty impressive. It doesn't always work that way. And it's not as much fun if it were to work that way. So what we found is that we kind of, when we were sitting in our kitchen table, we kind of thought it was going to be like that. But it really has been a lot more like that. And along the way, we've just found things that confounded us, and we figured out solutions, and then we've made more friends and had more conversations. Market research, we did every step of that way. So it's just a constant game. When you find what's in your your science box, you're going to hone that science box, and it's going to look different the next year. Everything looks different as you go down the path. So, yeah, it looks like that, and it's not over. Like, it kind of looks like at the end, like it's going to be straight, but we know that it is not. It's clear to us. All right, so in 2013, when we started looking at the concept, like we started kind of doing market research and looking at how many farms we had in the county and figuring all this stuff out, we had no idea of the statistics that Bill gave you 15 minutes ago. We didn't know those numbers then. We learned those numbers along the way. And what we learned is that we could work together. That was one of the things that, you don't know when you start out. We could work together. It could work fairly smoothly. I think things like developing a logo is far more stressful than you'd ever think it would be. And so you've seen that it's working. So what next? What's next on our agenda? This is what we're doing next. So what we found is that consumers now can get locally grown food in 2 places in Ann Arbor. An Argus model opened in New York along the Hudson Valley in October. Another Argus model is going to open in Chelsea in the spring. We are working with over 30 different people around the country on their interpretation of our model. We're an open source model, so we just give them whatever they need, financials, how you might do something, standard operating procedures, hiring procedures, whatever they need. But the restaurants didn't have anyone to buy local food from. So our local restaurants who wanted to buy food from farms would have to go to the farmer's market. So we were trying to help with that. Since the farmers are already coming to our store, we now have a hub. It has a catalog that the chefs can go on, and the day camp the day camp people and the sorority house mothers, and they can go on there and see what we have in our store, and they can just place an order like they would however they were doing it before at an industrial place, but now they can get it from local farms. So that's what's next in store at Argus. We're trying to expand the availability of local food, and we're sticking to our mission to grow the local agricultural economy. And I think that was, if I had to say one thing to you guys when you start your adventure, which you clearly are well on your way, stick to your mission. Remember what you originally started this for, because that will always keep you on the right path, and it will always keep you inspired to do the thing that you need to do that makes it work. That's it. Thank you. Oh, do we have to do questions? Edward, I know you're going to ask a question.
Question. How did you decide?
No, he wants one.
How did you decide on 75%, 25%?
Well, I'll let Bill answer that question.
Oh,
No.
Remember, you're between...
The us and the cocktail hour and the check. We do it as a break even. So we're a break even organization. We make enough money to cover all our costs. We look backward every year and see how much can we pay out to the farms and still break even. So it started at 80. As we loaded more costs in, it was more accurate. We are at 75. At some point, we might go back to 80.
and what about with the hub? How do you think that'll go?
The hub is going to be at the same kind of a deal in terms
It
of,
seems to me it's less labor intensive.
yeah, this is good. Yeah.
Here we go.